Okay. Um, Happy to be with you here tonight. And I'm just going to warn you that tonight's subject is a little bit hard to swallow. So I hope that you all already ate supper so you don't have that problem of swallowing. Um, the subject that I'd like to talk about is Hishtadlus and Betochon, the playoff between the two things, and Yaakov Avinu's approach. Yaakov Avinu, there's a pasuk in this week's parsha which is very puzzling. Yaakov Avinu says, "Masa ani yasalabesi." He has a financial responsibility. He has to take care of his family, make sure they have what to eat. So he tells Lavan, he says, "I need to have a parnasa. I need to have a job. I have to make money." And he goes out there to be mishtado, to make a parnasa. So we're going to speak a little bit about the parnasa and his Hishtadlus tonight. But I would also like to discuss another aspect of Yaakov Avinu. This question I heard from Moshe Shapiro once, and it's an interesting question. And the answer, I think, is even more interesting. Yaakov Avinu is called the Bechir Shababas. He was the best. In other words, he was the synthesis of Avram and Yitzchak together, and he's called Teferes. He's a special person, and he was Masakin Tfilas Arvis. He was a davening Ma'ariv. There's something which is extremely strange about Tfilas Ma'ariv. Ma'ariv is Rishus in the Gemara. One is not obligated from the Torah, so to speak. He's not obligated. How could it be that you're not obligated to daven the tefillah that Yaakov Avinu said you have to daven? And I'm going to answer that question with something that I heard once, which is really very, very moving. We think that we daven, we have an obligation to daven, and we say the words, and then we're finished for the day. Davening is an avoda in many ways, and part of it is we really have to connect to what we need and what we want, and it has to be real. Sometimes a person wants to ask mechila from somebody for something they did wrong, but they're still annoyed at that person for something else, and they can't ask it in a real genuine way. So they say, I'll wait till I feel better, till I'm able to do it in a real way. When a person davens to Kadosh Baruch Hu, he has to be really davening. He has to be paying attention. He has to be for real. And the tefillah that we daven, Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv, is not the same tefillah. I'd like to repeat something that I heard from our yeshiva in America, of Chaim Brester. He said once a fantastic thing, which I think is probably the biggest musar to everybody. I'm not saying everybody on this thing, to everybody. I heard a similar thing once from a cantor from England, but Rabbi Bressler said that he was once asked by a balabas, how can you daven the same davening 3 times a day, 7 days a week? Anybody want to answer that question? I know what I would. Someone ask me that question. It's easy for me to daven the same thing 3 times a day, 7 days a week. It's hard for me to hear the same chazan 3 times a day for 7 days a week. That could be, but in reality, that's a good question. Like, doesn't it get boring? It doesn't get boring? Well, I'll tell you. I believe that this is what our brother said. The question's a mistake. We try not to daven the same tefillah ever. We daven one tefillah every single time. That's it. We daven once. You have a time, you have a place, and that's how you do it. And your tefillah has to relate to where you are today, right now. The things that you ask for in your tefillah for today, I daven Ma'ariv, I had in mind that I should be matzliach in this year. I'm not going to have that in mind tomorrow morning. I'll have in mind this year, they'll have to say tomorrow night, but not tomorrow, not tonight's year. Every tefillah that a person says has to be an expression coming forth from where he is at that time. Exactly. So a person is in one place in the morning, and he's at a different place in the afternoon, and he's definitely in a third place at night. So Avram was masakin the tefillah for Shachris, which is when the person is getting up and going there. His tefillah, but he was the tefillah. Yitzchak was mincha in the middle of the day. Vayeitzei lasuach b'sadeh. It's a different stance of tefillah. And Yaakov, he made tefillah smayre, which tefillah is rishus. Nighttime is scary. I know nowadays we don't really have nighttime because we just have the same thing over and over. We have 24/7. We don't live with day and night. But in the olden times, nighttime was downtime. Nighttime, the wild animals came out. Nighttime was a scary time. And this is why we say after Kriyas Shema in the morning, we say Emes V'Yatziv. We say it's true. We believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'Yatziv when we stand up as we get ready to go to daven, because we see it, we feel it, and we're ready to go. The tefillah of Yaakov Avinu is actually the tefillah of Golus. Yaakov Avinu is our Golus man. He went to Lavan. He was on the lamb. He was our Golus man. And when we are in Golus, HaKadosh Baruch Hu isn't so apparent to us. And that's why we say Emes Ve'emunah. Because we don't see it, we believe it. Not everybody's there. To really have that emunah and be able to carry on, not everybody's able to do that. So that's why Tfilas Ma'ariv is only Rishus, because we can't demand from a person something that he can't deliver. Not everybody's always able to deliver it. Shachris and Mincha we can deliver. It's demanded from us. That place where we are during Shachris and Mincha, everybody has to be able to do it. Ma'ariv, theoretically, one doesn't have to. The Medrash says about Yaakov. Yaakov came to do a shidduch, and he didn't have a penny in his pocket. Why didn't he have a penny in his pocket? Why didn't he learn from Eliezer? You got to do a shidduch. You know, I don't know if you people know, when you do a shidduch here in this country, the first question that they ask is, how much money are you going to be giving? Right? So that's a reality. It's not new to the 21st century. If you read about the stories of hundreds of years ago, of all the horror stories about people they didn't give the dowry before the wedding, and the wedding got pushed off. These are truas or this is what's going on. Money has been around plaguing people for a long time. It's not a new disease, and I don't think with the corona shot we're going to be taking care of the money issue. Okay, we'll have to get a different shot for that to take care of the money issue. Anyways, so why did he come with any money? So there's a medrash, a fascinating medrash. The medrash says that he said, Ezri me'im Hashem oiseh shamayim v'aretz. Hashem will help. Okay, so anybody has to marry off any kids, when the Mashatchin says, what are you going to do? So you say that my rabbi said that Yaakov Avinu said that the Eibishter will help. And I'm willing to say that that will be true, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help you just like he helped Yaakov, if you do everything just like Yaakov. You're like a small Tanai. If you do everything like Yaakov, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help you like Yaakov. That's fine. You don't have to be Yaakov Avinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help you too. Anyways, he was talking to us. Ma'ariv, in dark times, he put himself in a situation that he didn't have money. There's not going with the medrash that Eliphaz took the money away. There's There's a few different midrash on what money is very, very important. Okay, I heard once there's a famous book called All for the Boss. All for the Boss. This fellow had a son whose name was Nachum David Herman, who was, whoever maybe Mr. Beer knows, he was a rav of a shul in Williamsburg, a super large shul for many, many years. He was an unbelievable darshan. He was a super colorful fellow, really a wonderful man. And my father actually happened to have been the Baal Kaira in his shul for many years. My father had a very warm relationship with him. And when I was a bocher, I ate in his house a few times. And he was a blend that does not exist. He was an American pre-Second World War that learned in Europe. So he was like a a very interesting, colorful fellow. And he said once to me that it says, "V'kesef yana es hakol." Kesef yana es hakol. I'm not sure how you people would translate it, but I'm going to tell you what he said to me, the translation of Kesef yana es hakol. He said the word ya'ane has two different translations. One is sifa'emfit. It answers the problem. You have a problem, throw money at it. That's one translation of the word yane. The other translation of the word yane is that it panics, it pains, it causes stress. That's inui nefesh. On Yom Kippur, a person is obligated to have inui, which is supposed to be deprived and balachat, so to speak. So he says, kesef yanes hakol, and I'm sure we're all familiar with this pshat, money causes problems. And he said this as he was eating his soup. He looks up at me and he says, I don't think these two pshatim are a stira. You can have money solving problems, money causing problems. And that's true. Money has that ability. So money is very important, but money has to be put in proper perspective. So Yaakov put himself in a position he didn't have any money. Vayisa Yaakov es Raglov. Yaakov, when he went away, it says that he picked up his feet to go. What does it mean he picked up his feet to go? So I'm telling you this, I heard this once. B'Shem the Chavis Das. The Chavis Das is a fantastic shot. This is a Maimer Chazal. Everybody here knows. And everybody's like, this one is Maimer Chazal. There must be some shot to it, but we don't really have a pshat. I'm going to tell you the pshat that the Chavis Das says, and you'll say, wow, this is an amazing thing. Avram Avinu was makbid that the three malachim, which were actually dressed as Arabs, when they came to his house, he washed their feet. Why did he wash their feet? Anybody remember why? What does Rashi say? Why did he wash their feet? Avodah Zarah. What was Avodah Zarah? Now, if you would think about worshiping the sun, the moon, I understand. Anybody out there have any kind of like a taiva to worship dust? What does it mean? What does it mean that he's worshiping the dust of his feet? So the Chavis Das says a fascinating thing. And I'm going to tell you, this is a very barbed line from a Bar Leib Shtema. But before I tell you that line, I'm going to tell you the line that was said once by Moshe Reichman. Moshe Reichman is this rich guy in Toronto. I'm sure everybody's heard of this fellow. And he one time said about making money, he said making money is 97% siyata d'shmaya and 3% seichel. Okay? And he said that 3% isn't always ma'akiv. It can work without that too. That's what he said. The Bar Leib Shteiman, there's a fellow whose name is Shalom Ber Saratskin, a yeshiva of a institution that many of you may be familiar with on our block. There's a kollel of Ater Shlomo, which is one of his institutions, and he has an unbelievable network of institutions. And he goes to Chutz La'aretz and he raises megabucks to support it, and it's an unbelievable thing. He was once by Rabbi Leib, and Rabbi Leib asked him, "What percent do you do l'shem shemayim, and what percent do you do for yourself?" And he answered that the percent that was l'shem shemayim was rather small. And the Bar Leib said, "Chaval, if you'd have more shaloi l'shma, you'd be more successful." So here we have, because the person has to have a drive. He has to have a drive, and that's what he told him. But the bottom line is that there's also a playoff. How much l'shma and shaloi l'shma you're going to have when you're going to do a project, if it should be successful or not. People go to work and they're successful. They say, "Why am I successful?" So say, "I went to a good course, and I have these qualities, and that's why I'm successful. Whatever that guy will tell me, I'll show you 5 people that have the exact same qualifications as him, and they're not successful. We all know that. There are many doctors that have the best of education and they can't get a job. So what makes the person successful? Siyata Dishmaya. But we make our Hishtadlus. How do we look at the Hishtadlus? Do we look at the Hishtadlus as the real, that's really what does it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps us out? Or do we look at it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps us out and we just make it look like we're doing something with our Hishtadlus? This is the question which really a person has to answer. And a person's Hishtadlus is his legwork. That's what he does. When the Malachim came, they were accomplished people, and they felt that they were secure in that which they did. They worshipped their Hishtadlus. Avraham Avinu says, let's get rid of the avak ragleihem. Let's get rid of that Hishtadlus that you think that that's really what you worship your success. Imagine, and I'm going to tell you this actually happened this week. Somebody came to me, this fellow goes to work in Chutz La'aretz, and we were discussing his upcoming trip and how much Hishtadlus he should have. And I told him, I want you to look at a certain sefer on what it says about Hishtadlus. And he looked at the sefer, he said, you ruined my month. Because if I would listen to what it said in that sefer, I wouldn't even bother me going to do any parnasa altogether. What am I supposed to do? And then we had to deal with him. That's part of the reason why I'm speaking about this. He was a catalyst on this week's Parsha. People worship their input into their job. That is not good. That is avodah zarah. The Gemara says, why is a person's wealth called his reglek? Shemamidu araglayim. She gives a person strength to stand. That it's important to have money, but don't think that you did it. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given it, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu take it back. And I'm going to just say over this joke which happened. I said this over in a Pirkei Avos, so those who have heard it before, I apologize, but it's an amazing joke. There was a fire in the town of Brisk, and many people were coming to the Beis Halevi, I think it was, or Reb Chaim, to find answers what to do. And as some of the people were waiting in the waiting room, a discussion between 2 merchants started. One of them had a dry goods store. And he said, when the fire started, my competition said that he'll buy me out at 50%. And I said, I'm not selling. As the fire got closer, it was already 2 blocks away. He said, I'll buy me out at 15%. And I said, I'm not selling. And if I was getting closer, it was already on the block. He said, I'll buy you out at 2%. And I said, I'm not selling. And the fire stopped the building before mine. You see what kind of good businessman I am? And as soon as he said that, all of a sudden the room of the Rav opened. The Rav came out and said, if there's anything to learn from this story, that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants a shaita to be a gvir, he'll be a gvir. He was not a good businessman. That was not a smart thing to do. Sometimes it can work itself out. Anyways, that's the parnasa that a person has. That's called his raglayim, and that's people who worship their hishtadlus. Avraham Avinu doesn't want them in his house. That's the pshat. Vayeitzei Yaakov Raglov. Yaakov went without a penny because he doesn't want to be dependent on his hishtadlus. Many years ago, probably about 30 years ago, I heard from a rabbi in America before Rosh Hashanah that people are supposed to have simonim to eat at Rosh Hashanah. So he said a person should eat a raisin with a piece of celery. And the reason he's supposed to eat a raisin with a piece of celery is you should be mispalot HaKadosh Baruch Hu to get a raisin celery. Okay? Raisin celery. So that's very nice and cute. My chavrusa at the time said, what a ridiculous thing to say. Why? So you get a raisin salary, and they'll just put you into the next tax bracket, and all of your raise is gone. Don't tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu how to give you parnasa. He doesn't need your eitzes. You get a raise in salary, and your car will break. You have to get a new car. Raise in salary, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for parnasa b'revach. How to do it, let HaKadosh Baruch Hu figure it out. He doesn't need your help. We have to mispalo for what we need. How we Yad Hashem Tiksor, his hand is not short. We can get it however it is. Okay. So now we have the subject over here of making a Hishtadlus. So some people, they have a parnasa and they say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please help me that my parnasa should be successful. How do you know that's where your parnasa is going to come from? The story is told of the Kotzker Rebbe, right? There's a fellow, this is a disease. Again, there are many diseases that have been around for many years. So some people say, well, it's all right. That's the way things are supposed to be. So I'll say, if that's true, then probably we're supposed to be in Golis because it's been around for many years. Not everything that's been around for many years means that's the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to change. Anyways, there's this fellow that after davening, didn't wait for after davening. Before Aleinu, he was already out the door and taking his cart and going to sell his wares in the street. So the Kotzker asked him, where are you running to? So he said, I'm running to my parnasa. So the Kotzker Rebbe asked him, how do you know? Maybe your parnasa is the other way. How do you know which side of town your clients are going to be on? You want to be batuach that you're going to have parnasa? You have to write a Hishtadlus. Alan, when you get up in the morning, how did you decide which way to go in your cab?
Heads this way, tails the other.
One more time.
Heads this way, tails the other. Spin a coin.
Heads or tails the other. Okay, that's a good way. That's a good way. Okay, but again, there's no real way of knowing, right? There's no way of knowing. So you had that kind of a job that it's clear you're not going to do it. You don't know what's going to happen. I just want to know, did you ever go the same? You always went the same way? What really happened? You don't know. All right. It depends if the light was green or not. Huh? That's what it depended on. Anyways, so we have over here a concept of being mishtadel. Yaakov Avinu tells Lavan, let's make a deal and we're going to work out the parnasa. Lavan hears the deal and he tells Yaakov, Lu ye kidvarecha. That's a great idea. That's a losing proposition. And Yaakov does the deal. Doesn't make sense. Yaakov said, Anachi esel Vayeitzei, and Lavan tells him it's a losing proposition, and he does it. I want to ask you people the following question. This story happened to me about 30 years ago. I met a guy that I know he had a lot of chayvus, and he bought a lottery ticket. So I asked him, why did you buy a lottery ticket? He doesn't come from New York to know that you buy a dream. He doesn't know that answer, right? I asked him, why did you buy a lottery ticket? And he says, Hishtadlus. Is there anybody over here that would agree with him?
Yes.
Why? What's the Hishtadlus?
I agree. You're not going to win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket.
I understand, but you can't lose money if you don't buy a ticket either. Is that
True,
called
but the loss is small relative to the possible gain.
So is that called Hishtadlus?
With regards to winning lottery, yes. With regards to making money, no.
So I understand. He's yes, that's true. But the reason why he's buying the lottery is to make money. Are you going to make Hishtadlus to make money? That's like a guy opening the store in the middle of a desert. You know, why are you opening the store? Well, maybe somebody will crawl in here that hasn't had anything to eat and drink for 6 months. You don't build a restaurant in the middle of a desert. That's not Hishtadlus. That's called a waste of money. Buying a lottery ticket is a waste of money. The only people who make money on lotteries is the people who sell them. Right? So I don't think that's called Hishtadlus. Yaakov Avinu statistically bought a lottery ticket. The chance is, all of you people, if you would put sticks into the ground and you would put X's on them, none of you are going to get cattle that come out with X's on them. It's just not going to happen. So what was he thinking? There's a famous story about the Rebbe who said to his chassid, if you buy the lottery, you'll win. And it was $1 million lottery, and he bought it. And somebody asked to buy it from him. He says, how much you can pay for it? He said, I'll pay $900,000 for it. So he sold it. And the lottery ticket didn't win. So went back to the Rebbe to complain. So the Rebbe said, why did you sell for $900,000? What's the answer? Because he didn't really believe that it was going to win. Right? If you would believe that's going to win, you wouldn't sell for $900,000. You wait another 2 days and can collect $1 million. That's what would happen, right? So this is the concept. Yaakov Avinu, he believed that his Hishtadlus was enough. The Baal Shem Tov, this is a fantastic story. The Baal Shem Tov went to raise money for tzedakah, and he knocked on the Gvir's door, and the Gvir was tired of all these people coming to knock on his door for tzedakah. He decided he's not going to answer the door, and he knocked a few times. The Gvir didn't answer the door, and he walked away. And after the Gvir heard the fellow walk away, his curiosity got the better of him. He wanted to see who was there trying to collect funds, and he saw it was the Baal Shem Tov. So he screamed at him, Rabbi Yisrael, come back, I want to give you some money. And the Baal Shem Tov continued going. And his Gavai said, Rebbe, he wants to give you money. So he said, I already was Mishtadl. I don't have to go back. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give me the money. I don't have to retrace my steps. That's called a boiteach. He's not going to sell out. Yaakov Avinu understood, I do my Hishtadlus, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give me my parnasa. The two do not have to have so much common ground. And I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to prove it to you. I'm willing to say, some people may say that I'm about Gaiva, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my Anivas. I'm willing to say that Yaakov Avinu was smarter than me. Okay? I'm willing to say that. And I'm also willing to say, the Arizal says that Lavan changed the maskoret of Yaakov 100 times. That means they made up a deal that has to be circles, so he put circles into the thing, and then he said, no, it has to be squares, and they all gave birth to squares. The next time he said stripes, and he put in stripes into the water, and then he changed it to stars, and they all gave birth. Every time he was doing Hishtadlus, and the end is that the sheep gave birth to the last agreement that was signed. So I'm not such a smart guy, but probably by the 50th, the 60th, for sure the 80th time, I'd probably figure out that what ends up happening has nothing to do with what I'm doing. So if I'll meet my grandpa Yaakov on the 95th time, I would say to him, hey, Legazeda, what are you doing? And he'll tell me, Hishtadlus. What am I going to ask him? I'm going to ask him, are you building a restaurant in the middle of a desert? It's not. Zev, you disagree? Zev. All right. Anyways.
It works.
It works? What works?
Every time he does those designs, that's what's born.
No, that's not what's born. The opposite of what we did the design. He made in the design, he put in squares, and then Lavan changed it to circles. They give birth to circles. It didn't work. The result of what was born was the last deal made, which was well past the time that he put the maklis into the rehitim. It didn't work. Because not only was it a bad investment, like Lavan said originally, but it's worse than that. It didn't even work. So what happened? HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a nes. So Yaakov go back to the base medrash and learn, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu make a nes. Why are you busy putting these maklos into the water? This I really believe is a good question. Why is he putting the maklos into the water? Rabbi Simkin, you have an answer? Yeah, you have to turn on. You're not on. Hello? All right.
Hello.
He didn't want to be samech al hanes.
I'm asking you, is that a nes or not a nes?
You called it a nes, and he didn't want to be samech al hanes.
So I believe that that's more or less the answer. This is an answer that the Beis Halevi says. How much hishtadlus a person has to do depends on his level of amunah and bitachon that he has. That's what he says. Now, I would like to share with you a story closer to modern times. Mr. Herman, Shagafayel Mendelovich, when he came to America, he saw people being Machal Shabbos, and he asked you why he be Machal Shabbos, going to work on Shabbos. So they said, it's Pekuach Nefesh, you can't get a job and not work on Shabbos. So he happened to have had a job that he didn't have to work on Shabbos. But it bothered him that people are saying that you can't be Shomer Shabbos. Listen to this. He quit his job. He had a family, no income. He quit his job and said, I'm going to go and look to see if I can find the job without being Shomer Shabbos. With being Shomer Shabbos, and he found the job. He worked at it for a week. He quit that job. I think he did 2 or 3 times before he went to give people techacha to say that it's possible to be Shomer Shabbos. Look at that level of betochen that a person can have. He's willing to put himself, it's an unbelievable. A person has a family to support, and he doesn't want to tell people that they're doing the wrong thing, but he doesn't do it until he tests it out himself, and he wagers the security of his family. It's an amazing story of personal caring for others. Anyways, I myself, when I started going into the shidduchim, the issue, when I was a bocher, I went over to my father, and I asked him, what am I supposed to do for Hishtadlus? What's my job? So he looked at me, amazed at the question. He said, you're a yeshiva bocher. You're supposed to sit and learn. For Hishtadlus, for shidduch, you should say 2 kapitlim of Tehillim every day. That's your Hishtadlus. And it worked. I got married. Anyways, so the idea of Yaakov wanted to be boteach in Hashem. The pasuk says as follows: Baruch hagever asher yiftach b'Hashem, v'hoya Hashem mivtacho. Baruch is the person who is boteach in Hashem, and Hashem is his guarantor. What does that mean? That's double talk. So there are those who explain this exactly with the concept that we're talking about. Why do I go to work? Because I need parnasa. Where does my parnasa come from? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm not boteach in my job. I'm boteach in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why do I go to work? Because I have to make Hishtadlus. The two do not have to connect. In other words, I want to speak about something nowadays and what this all means. There are people who wear masks because of Corona. There are people who didn't go anywhere. There's somebody in Ramat Beit Shemesh that I know rather well, that when Corona came around, he locked himself up in his apartment. He didn't go out, and he ended up getting Corona. So where did he get it from? He had to go to the doctor. He went to the doctor, and the doctor had Corona. He caught it from the doctor. So what does it prove? Nothing. It doesn't prove anything. A person has to do his Hishtadlus. How much Hishtadlus does a person have to do? So that depends on varied factors. It depends really on a lot of different factors. It's not so simple to answer that question, how much hishtadlus a person has to do. And I'm going to share with you a story which I heard from a friend of mine. And this is an unknown story. I don't believe there's more than 30 people alive today that know this story, but I'm telling with you. There was a yeshiva here in Eretz Yisrael called Ber Yaakov. The yeshiva still exists. And the original founders of that yeshiva were two people. One was a Moshe Shmuel Shapiro, and the other one was a Volba. And their original business deal between them was that 1 year one would be in charge of the finances, and the next year the other one would be in charge of the finances. So each one of them had a year on and a year off for the finances. In the beginning of the yeshiva, one of the earlier years, it came around Cheshvan, the beginning of Kislev, and Revolva saw that he's not going to be able to make it through the winter, for sure not through the summer. And he started thinking about maybe he should go to Chutz La'aretz to collect money. But he understood if he's going to leave the yeshiva, there's going to be Rifyon in the yeshiva. The boys are going to slack off. And going to Chutz La'aretz has its Nisyonis and the Bidl Torah. And he was very uncertain if he should do it or not. And he went to the Chazon Ish, and he asked the Chazon Ish what to do. And the Chazon Ish said, you should go to Chutz La'aretz. I don't really get all the pratim of what he said, but that's what he said, go to Chutz La'aretz. You have to make Hishtadlus. And he went, and everything turned out okay. 10 years later, he was back in the same situation. Just there was no Chazon Ish to go to. So he went to the Briskerov to ask the Briskerov what to do. So the Briskerov said, why do you have to go to Chutz La'aretz? Stay here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help you from here. And he stayed in Eretz Yisrael, and it worked itself out. And I know in many stories of these kinds of things. So what's the answer to the question? I believe at different points in different life, different things can work out different ways. There's not a guaranteed one way to make Hishtadlus. So, but this is an important nekuda. I think we have to learn from this Sedra. Yaakov Avinu is our Golus man. He's the believer. We in Golus have to believe. We have to be mischazik and emunah mitochen. We have to believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the maker and the shaker in our lives. And that's what a legacy which we got from Yaakov Avinu. Yes, we do our Hishtadlus, and it's very important to do our Hishtadlus, but we have to understand the bracha, the hatzlacha, the parnasa that we have is dependent on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The only Hishtadlus that we can do that's guaranteed to work is to be mispalo. So before a person figures out what Hishtadlus I should do the thing that's a vadai. If a person is mispalo, does Torah mitzvahs, the vadai will help him that we should have bracha and hatzlocha and all that we do. Okay, thank you very much. You should all have a great night. Okay, call to the